Life is a continuous struggle of improving what we see and how we see our environment. It's by no means a stretch to say that life itself is unfair. We never had a choice on whether we were born or not. We never had a choice on where we were born, who our parents are, and if the things that define us would potentially target us for persecution in the wrong era of time. The struggles we face that can literally kill some of us are even sometimes trivialized and laughed at just a few short years later as us lacking compassion and understanding towards each other, and simply overreacting to what we don't know, an all too common sentiment when we don't know if someone or something is safe or not. So, when we come of age in our own eras of time, we are forced to decide how we see the world through our own eyes, and if the world is worth trusting or vilifying. But as I said, the world is ever changing, and the world you loved as a child can completely cease to exist as an adult. This revelation of nature has turned many people before us bitter, and will continue to crank out those who die unsatisfied with existence altogether. But what is it that people do when their world ends and there is nothing left? What do we do when simply existing is only suffering? There are a myriad of answers to this, some that are far too dark for me to be willing to state on a YouTube channel. But there are beautiful answers that prove life can and will always endure towards something better. Some answers come from those before us that have experienced worlds we only read about in history books. Others are tales of fiction meant to teach us something through entertainment. So there is one story I would like to focus on. Bear with me, as I understand this is a very silly transition on the all too tired question of what is the meaning of life. Fallout New Vegas is a gift that has kept on giving. The truest RPG is one that shows you something new, even after thousands of hours of playtime. And New Vegas is this, at least to me, to a T. In the Honest Hearts DLC, there was a man, a myth, a legend even. His name was Randall Clark, and he was immortalized as a guide for generations of tribals known as the Sorrows. And in the game, we get to read logs he wrote detailing his life long after his passing. In order to understand and appreciate Randall Clark's situation for his story, we first have to very briefly explain Fallout lore. So Fallout as a whole is a sci-fi world of conflict that was ended via nuclear Armageddon. China had gone to war with the United States and successfully taken Alaska. In response, America had annexed Canada, and the war crimes that took place would haunt U.S. Army soldier Randall Clark. Randall Clark was able to separate from the U.S. Army and continued life as a neglectful husband and father to his wife Charlotte and son Alex in Salt Lake City, Utah. So this of course was a direct response to his guilt for his military service, so he would go on hunting trips and leave his family days at a time. He was inbound back home on one of his many camping trips and would witness the event of a lifetime that would put pain to those thoughts. 2077 and 2078 log summary. It's 2077, and Randall has an hour left in his drive before he makes it home. His truck suddenly stopped on the road along with another vehicle in the other lane. Immediately, he knew what had caused it. An EMP from nuclear bombs being dropped. Sparing his eyes, he looks south. A flash of light erupts behind him so bright, it looked like the world was on fire. The old couple in the other car are screaming they can't see. 12 more blinding flashes of light later. Randall waits for half an hour before taking a look. He gazes in the direction of what was Salt Lake City to take in the now emptiness where his family had died. He knew not to kid himself. They were gone. In a literal flash. Randall grabs his gear from his truck, sets the old couple down, assuring them everything is going to be okay. The world as they all knew it had just successfully come to an end. Now in the middle of nowhere with no help for miles, and no electronics that are going to work, he allows them to hold and comfort each other, and instantly kills the now blind couple with a single bullet that goes through both their heads. The world now over, and having absolutely nobody as he just watched his family get obliterated by nuclear bombs. He starts walking as he only has survival left. He finds a cave riddled with equipment and supplies of a geological survey team that left to return to their families once the bombs had fallen. But Randall knew they had no families to return to. Randall would stay there for 2 months, riding out the wave of lethal radiation outside, rationing supplies and collecting condensation on the cave walls with a shirt. A massive storm had hit that had successfully cleared the radiation according to a Geiger counter he had. The more lethal amounts anyways. As a fan of Fallout, I can very sufficiently say that there are tons of very horrible stories out there when it comes to individual characters. But something I can say is Fallout New Vegas definitely does not pull their punches. Being subjected to the war crimes on Canada by the United States, Randall already had a lifetime full of regrets, only to watch his family get blown away in a distance over an hour away. And now quite literally the only thing that he can do is just sit in a cave for 2 months and just stew over his loss. Never mind that the entire world has ended. Year 2083, 2084, and 2095 log summary. 5 years have now passed, and in this time Randall has now seen how the plants and animals have mutated from the radiation. He also has taken the soul-crushing burden of returning home. A 7 to 9 day trip turned to 15 days as to not walk into lethal pockets of radiation. The bombs had thoroughly wiped Salt Lake City, Utah off the map. Craters dressed with warped steel girders and mounds of bricks. Finding what was his house was impossible, as he couldn't even find the road his house sat at anymore. His family had been owed a burial, but more importantly, he owed it to himself to suffer as payment for surviving when his family didn't. Look upon what was left of your home. Gaze at the emptiness. Let the dead silence permeate your ears. This is what you deserve. He should have been with his family instead of using camping trips to sidestep his guilt of the war. He wanted to believe his family died in an instant, but the thought of the bombs hitting the other side of the city and his family burning alive and being shredded by shrapnel also occupied his thoughts. But Randall is a realist. The instant death scenario was a comforting thought he knew was a lie, because the truth is, he would never have any way of knowing. That much more justification to simply revel in the suffering of being alive. He's alone now, and it's his fault. He finally saw other people for the first time in years. A fantasy of making friends with these 3 men he saw from a distance, but they're more likely cannibals, he thinks, so he prioritizes alone but alive. We now jump to 11 years later, and it's now the year 2095. 18 years after the bombs fell, Randall is greeted to the sight of human life once again. 28 Spanish speakers that are worn down from travel. He makes out the word paradiso several times as he surveys them. With nothing else of substance in his life, he has taken a liking to stalking his neighbors. They're here to stay, it seems. He gets careless and is nearly discovered as a man he designates as Pedro is peeing next to him, but doesn't see him under the cover of darkness. A shining moment of morality rears its head for Randall as the man he designates as Jose, and possible father of the pregnant woman Maria, has broken his leg. He was chasing a bighorn and got careless. He yells for help but is 300 yards from camp. Randall can't help but intervene and does his best impression of a Jose yell to keep baiting the camp to track down who they think is Jose. He continues this until they can hear the real Jose. Jose has been brought back to camp, but his leg is now infected. Despite the objectively good deed Randall has performed, he now has the displeasure of witnessing the camp thanking God that they magically found a bottle of antibiotics on a rock outside of their camp of all places. Of course, God wanted to burn the world, but apparently still cares enough to leave the camp antibiotics. You really have to feel for Randall in this moment. The only thing he's had to live for is survival itself. It's been nearly 20 years, and the most meaningful interaction he's had with anyone in recent time are the old people he mercy killed directly after the bombs dropped. He's lost everything but the camping gear in the back of his truck and the clothes on his back. And when he finally does something truly good, even at the risk of his own life, he gets no credit. As much as he wanted to be a part of this group's lives, the idea of his existence isn't even so much as a consideration. And now he has to continue to sit back and just watch everyone else enjoy the so-called paradise without him. After all, this group of 28 Mexicans, they all have each other. And as we can probably guess, some of them are family. And what is family when you have nobody, and nobody even knows you exist? 2096 log summary. The first battle for Mount Zion had come and gone. The 28 Mexicans that Randall had been observing had been chomped down to 7, which included 5 children. All the other women and children that would have possibly been taken alive were among the group of people that reached for their guns, so they were quickly gunned down. This new group had arrived were much bigger than them, over 100 strong, with over half of them being men. They have coughing fits, patrols, pistols, and SMGs. This wouldn't be the first time Randall stalked a group under the cover of darkness. No matter what, he had to save the women and children. The dwellers of Vault 22 had solidified their place as Randall's enemies, as Randall bared witness to the Vault dwellers devouring the women and children. Little did they know the carnage that would begin to take place when night came, and it was only going to get worse from here. Randall had made the habit of ambushing the enemy patrols as they would constantly give away their position by coughing. He would scavenge weapons and ammo from their bodies and lay traps for when another patrol found them. One of the patrols would eventually find a cave he was hiding in and fall victim to his traps. But beyond that and a shot to the leg, the Vault 22 dwellers never came close to being a threat to Randall Clark. So Randall has truly shown what an impressive person he is. It originally would have been easy to say he wouldn't have been able to deal with a group before these logs, but that was never his perspective, actually. He was a kind man, and as much as he was troubled and haunted by his old life, he has now proven he's willing to risk it all for what is right, not for himself, but to defend other people, or in this case, avenge them. He willingly played the role of a ghost with the Mexican group, but at no point whatsoever was there any ill intent over this, or any maliciousness that was going to take place as far as he was concerned. He simply watched over them and helped when he could. But now that he had crossed quantifiable evil against a group 4 times the original group's size, the role of Ghost became a role for vindication, as he had a singular obsession for a future where these evil people were wiped off the planet. It didn't matter it was over 100 against 1. His will is now inflicted upon this unsuspecting group where nobody knew he existed, and he even could have just left Mount Zion as a safety measure. And for Fallout fans, this probably was never a consideration, as it originally wasn't for me as someone who's played this game for thousands of hours. But to people that never actually played the Fallout games or just aren't very familiar with the universe as a whole, I'm sure it dawned on some of you that actually there was another scenario worth pointing out here. They're in Mount Zion. This is such a massive canyon. There was so much space to go around where everyone could have coexisted, and not simply avoided each other, but actually coexisted. And somewhere, Randall could have mixed in after seeing such wholesome cooperation from the two groups. They could have lived happily ever after right then and there, and the story would be over. But alas, war never changes. By the time you, the player, go to Mount Zion and see these logs detailing Randall's legacy, you will see that he's gone by many names as you even interact with some of the other NPCs that know him based off of these different legacies. But for now, he is simply the survivalist. Year 2097, 2100, and 2101 log summary. The dwellers of Vault 22 would vacate the canyon with a harrowing message after over half of them had been killed by Randall. 118 had been partially cut down over the course of 11 months by an evil spirit. There were thoughts it was a man because it uses guns, but no man could possess such evil and defy their efforts by their calculations. A few died to the sickness carried from the vaults that they had originally lived in, but that is few in number compared to what the evil spirit had killed. Now there are only 34 left, with 6 overseers being killed in the process, and it is now the 7th overseer that has decided to vacate and to warn everyone on a holotape to avoid Mount Zion at all costs, but not before eating their dead. 4 days later, someone else found a cave Randall was hiding in. This one met the unfortunate spot of a bear trap. Her death was halted by the way she started crying. Perhaps it was Randall's compassion. Perhaps it was his loneliness. Perhaps it was this vault dweller's, Sylvia's, cooperation. She had been spared a quick end and was now in Randall's care. She had corroborated the information about them being sick from the vault they came from and added the extra context that she had witnessed her group's evil and rejected it. They had a level of cruelty towards women that also inspired her to leave the group the first chance she got. 3 years have passed. It is now September 9th of 2100, and Randall is scared. He wasn't scared when he deployed to Canada, just disgusted towards the war crimes. He wasn't scared when the world ended since his family had died. He wasn't even scared fighting the vault dwellers, as he was a man with nothing left to live for. He didn't even know why he still allowed himself to live. All he understood was the only time he felt happy was when he killed the vault dwellers, or at least a feeling close to happiness. Randall is 47, and Sylvia is pregnant with their child in a nuclear Armageddon. Randall had a whole life before the war, and Sylvia was none the wiser about it. All she can think about is how excited she is to have a baby with Randall. Randall had lost Charlotte and Alex when the bombs fell. When that happened, he had nothing left to live for. And now Sylvia is the first actual human interaction he's had in 20 years. Not a shootout or apparently being God by providing antibiotics, but someone to actually talk to. Someone that knew he existed and cared about him. But now she's gone. While giving birth, their would-be son Michael didn't survive. He was being birthed feet first, and a C-section was performed, but it was done too late by Randall's estimations. Randall had even taken the liberty of going to a nearby town and reading up on medical books to make the birth a smooth transition. But Sylvia never woke up when Randall used meds to put her under. Buried them south of the Narrows. Well, this time I was by their side. So much better. I think I can finally do it. Blow my fucking brains out all over this goddamn cave. Randall's survivor's guilt was the only thing he could feel over the course of 24 years when it wasn't 11 months of happiness killing the vault dwellers. He really did care about his family. He just never truly came back from the war. Sylvia and Michael were a new start to a life he could be happy in, proud even. But he had lost his family all over again. What more is there? He is the only living person in the canyon at this point. If he died, nobody would even be around to care. Year 2108, 2113, and 2123 log summary. 12 more years pass, and it's now Randall's 60th birthday. He gifts himself the present of a bottle of whiskey and a 12-gauge slug through the head. It's been 33 years total of nothing good happening in his life of guilt and torture, but he still can't do it. There's no logical reason, he thinks. Another 10 years have passed and he is now 70, almost like the first time there is a group of 24 people. They're all children this time. They range from 8 to 14, and they even took almost the exact same spot as the group of 28 Mexicans nearly 28 years ago. 70 years old, and old man Randall immediately returns to old habits. He listens in and gathers the kids escape the place they call the school. The older children tend to the younger kids, and they scare them with a seemingly ghost story threat that the principal will get them when they don't behave. Old man Randall goes into protective mode again and thinks to himself, if the principal shows up, he'll blow his head off. Randall would spend the rest of 2123 leaving the kids notes and giving them gifts for survival like weapon manuals and medical books. He says that he gifts them Zion to make up for all the sorrows of their lives. He tells them to be kind to each other, but to strike back when they are attacked, and he signs every note, the father. He's dying of cancer, and it's gotten harder and harder to see the children on top of his old age. So it's decided. He doesn't want another birthday. He's given the kids most of what he owns, but he doesn't want the children to see him, the father, as a broken down old man. He decided he will meet his death on a high mound, staring at the stars. The cold will take him fairly quickly at his age and condition. His life comes to an end that night, and the last log ends with this. I hope they'll do well. I hope no harm comes to them, from within or without. Did my best to prepare them with the last few notes. Said something kind about each one of them, what makes each one special. Told them the father was pleased by their kind natures and that it would be up to them to handle things on their own from now on. That I'd be silent but still watching and still caring. Line. Then, oh yes. Lying to you, Char, and Alex, and Sylvie. Told you I'd be with you forever, but I wouldn't go back and unsay it once if I could. What was the point of it all? So many failures. But I never forgot your face, or little nuts, or sorry, Sylvie's. But they used to say that happened after a while, but it never did for me. Maybe the only point of all this living was to keep those pictures in my head going for as long as I could. It was the only life I could give you. Not a day went by without. It wasn't choice. I chose to die again and again, just never did. Body had its own drive. Well, the little ones will need it. Species will need it if it's to continue. That blind drive onward. I wish them well. It's been a gift to me, at the end of it all, to behold innocence. Goodbye, Zion. Randall Dean Clark, February 5th, 2053 to January 2124. As mentioned, it's interesting to see Randall, even at 70 years old, return to old habits. It's been nearly 28 years, and he sees the familiar signs of a friendly group that simply wants to survive. Them being kids was probably good enough, but even setting up camp where the Mexicans were at could only be seen as a sign of safety, right? But he made the correction of not leaving his existence up to chance this time. He left notes that were more directly incriminating of his existence. He is the father this time, but his willingness to be kind inspired generations of a tribe that would be called the Sorrows to treat people as he treated them. The Sorrows are the direct descendants of the children he watched over. They thrived because of his intervention, And in the Honest Hearts DLC, which takes place 177 years after Randall Clark's death, he did it. He successfully guided those children into success. Randall would have loved to have found a group of people he could live with, but it never happened. So he created the future he wanted in those children. And nearly 200 years later, the sorrows still carry the values of the father that were taught to them. I read a good portion of Randall's last entry because this is what I think is such a perfect picture to the meaning of life. Randall had lost 2 families. Losing one is more than most people could ever take, and he kept going because he couldn't bring himself to end his own life. But despite all the pain and loneliness of his life, he directly asks, what was the point of it all? So many failures. Because it was worth enduring that pain to carry on the memories of the people he cares about, even if they're gone. And it was worth it to nurture the innocence of the children he had seen. Randall Dean Clark lived most of his life as the survivalist, but he would go on to be the vengeful spirit of Mount Zion, and he would be immortalized as the father. But all of this is merely a testament to his character and what he was, simply a man. And I think that is what makes life impactful. The fact you can move someone so thoroughly they will live for the moment to be with you, even when you're gone. And they'll carry on seeing you in moments of life, wishing you were there with them. And like those that came before us, there is something precious about passing down the good of humanity to the younger generation. We might live out our whole day not being at our best, but when most of us see children, we want to set a good example. Dare to even be good, because they deserve to have it better than we did. So we shield them from cruelty, and we wish for them to be better than us, so that when it's their turn to guide innocence, they do the same for the children of their day, but they can do it even better than we did. And our children will be better people, using us as guides of who they want to be. Thanks for watching, and until next time.